Obviously, you're very familiar with the impact that Amazon has had on Seattle. What do you think the broader impact of this decision is on the tech economy, or will be?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting for New York in particular. I mean, they've obviously had a thriving tech economy for a while, and there are some great companies in New York, and there's been a lot of press coverage about Google moving in and increasing its presence there. And Amazon is in New York anyway, even before this latest sort of decision. But what I think is interesting is that what we've seen here in Seattle, and certainly what we've seen in Silicon Valley, is that when you have major anchor tenant companies like Amazon that are on the cutting edge and are continually coming up with new businesses to start, it's very valuable to the rest of the startup ecosystem. It attracts venture capitalists. It attracts other large companies, which we've certainly seen here in Seattle. All of the big boys are here in large part because of Amazon and Microsoft being headquartered here. And so New York has really lost, I think, an opportunity to add that anchor tenant to their tech ecosystem. And that will have reverberations, I'm quite sure.
David, we've talked about Techlash on the show. That's my word for this sort of pushback against big visionary tech companies that, in the past have, almost always been welcomed. Do you think this is part of a longer running trend?
Well, I think income inequality is a huge force in American and global culture right now, and the fact that it was the world's richest man's company and a district representative by the most fist-raised congressperson in the new Congress does play in. I mean, there was a feeling of wrongness that these tax breaks would be going to Jeff Bezos's company. But I would just disagree with your other guest. I don't think, as a New Yorker, this is not that big of a deal for the New York tech economy. Look at the scale of Google's expansion that's underway. They just announced a huge new campus in addition to the one they already have, where they're gigantic occupants of a space in Chelsea. I do think it would have been better for New York if this deal had gone through, but I also know there's tremendous concerns about gentrification, and Amazon did not engage with the community effectively. So I think it is somewhat petulant, as the state senator in your earlier segment suggested, that they just, when they got in resistance, they just said, you know what, we're going home. I don't admire that.
Heather, look, Amazon could have stuck at the table longer and tried to work it out, right?
Yeah, they certainly could have. And I think one of the things that it's hard to internalize if you're on the outside, and particularly if you're in early stage tech, is, as I am and as your other guests may be too, I think we don't understand how hard it is for these very large companies to make moves quickly. And so for Amazon to make a big investment in New York and in continuing this process with a very uncertain outcome right now, I mean, the populace and the politicians are all over the map. I think it's very hard for them to say, yes, we can bet the future of some really big initiatives that we have on this process going the way it was advertised to go for us. I mean, when I think of sort of who failed in this overall picture, I think it's very much the political leaders of New York. When you think about who should have had the conversations with the unions, who should have had the conversations with the representatives of that specific community, why was the senator that you had on earlier not brought into the confidence of the mayor and the governor earlier on to say, hey, this is what we think we should do and why. Here's what the company is prepared to do. What do you think? Let's get this all done so that we don't have this big gaping hole of uncertainty in front of a very large company that has to build office space for a growing workforce. The planning that's required for that is just huge, and the risk that they would be exposed to if they stuck it out and then ultimately failed to get approvals for what they have decided to build it's really a large risk. And as a shareholder of a publicly held company, you wouldn't want your company to take that kind of risk if they didn't have to.
David, obviously we have this. We've got the backlash against Facebook, Congress, people looking into it, Google as well. How does this impact your outlook on tech for this year?
Well, big tech is in the doghouse. Another story that the Washington Post reported today is that Facebook may be paying a multi-billion-dollar fine to the FTC for violating its consent decree over privacy. So, look, big tech is not handling itself well. I don't think Amazon is used to dealing with pushback, and I think they showed that here. Facebook clearly has proven in the last 2 years they don't know how to deal with pushback. You know, Facebook is these are immature companies in general, and I think they've become haughty and somewhat arrogant. And I think we see that in both situations. I want to reiterate, I think it would have been better for New York if Amazon came here. But the entire process that Amazon drove from the beginning, announcing its second headquarters project, was super secret, in very many people's opinion, quite furtive and manipulative, the way they pulled all these cities in, gathered all this data, everybody was throwing money at them. It was not an attractive process, in my opinion, and I don't think the company handled it well.